Cold case solved. The 1976 murder of George Clarence Seitz on December 10, 1976. George Clarence Seitz, a World War I veteran and longtime resident of Jamaica, Queens, vanished just 2 days before his 82nd birthday. He had left his home to visit a barber shop on 161st Street, but never returned. Despite thorough efforts, detectives were unable to make any arrests, and the case eventually went cold. That changed 43 years later in March 2019, when NYPD detectives received a tip from a woman who claimed she had witnessed something horrific as a child. She said that when she was just 11 years old, her stepfather had buried black garbage bags in the backyard of their Richmond Hill, Queens home, and she believed he had fed body parts to their dog. On March 12, 2019, authorities uncovered partial human remains, a pelvis and torso buried under concrete in the backyard of that home on 115th Street. Neighbors were shocked, describing the area as a quiet block that had been plagued by unsavory tenants in the 1970s. Initial DNA testing did not reveal the identity of the victim. In February 2021, advanced DNA and genealogical analysis by the FBI and A&M laboratories led investigators to identify the remains as those of George Seitz. Through extensive interviews and records searches across 5 states, authorities identified the killer Martin Mata, who was 29 at the time of the murder and worked as a barber at the shop Seitz had visited that day. Assistant District Attorney Karen Ross said Mata stabbed Seitz in the head, stole approximately $8,000 from him, then dismembered and buried his body. He discarded the head and scattered the arms and legs across Queens. Mata went on to live a quiet life, marrying and raising children, all while allegedly threatening family members with statements like, "Do you want to end up like the guy in the backyard?" In October 2022, Mata pleaded guilty to the murder. At sentencing, he showed no remorse. George Seitz's niece, Gertrude Jones, gave an emotional victim impact statement. "My mother died never knowing what happened to her brother." Judge Kenneth Holder sentenced the now 75-year-old Martin Mata to 20 years in prison, saying, "I hope they are hard, terrible years." George was finally given a proper military burial nearly 5 decades after his murder. A family reunited. The case of Melissa Highsmith. In a separate decades-old case, a woman named Melissa Highsmith, abducted as a toddler in 1971, was finally reunited with her family more than 50 years later, thanks to DNA testing. Melissa was taken from her home in Fort Worth, Texas on August 23, 1971, when she was just 21 months old. Her mother, Alta Apentenko, had placed a newspaper ad seeking a babysitter. A woman calling herself Ruth Johnson responded to the ad and convinced Alta to let her pick up Melissa from her roommate while Alta was at work. The woman never brought Melissa back, despite numerous searches and false leads over the years. The mystery of Melissa's whereabouts remained unsolved until recently. Advances in DNA testing helped locate Melissa, who had been living under a different name, unaware of her true identity. She was finally reunited with her biological family, putting an emotional end to a decades-long mystery. Reunited after 51 years. The Melissa Highsmith story. Just 2 weeks after 21-month-old Melissa Highsmith was abducted from her home in Fort Worth, Texas, in August 1971. Her mother, Alta Apentenko, made a desperate plea. She placed a message on the front page of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, begging the kidnapper to come forward. "I beg of you to call me. I have been going out of my mind." Though years passed, the Highsmith family never gave up hope. Every year they threw birthday parties for Melissa even without her there, but the case eventually went cold. Then, in November 2022, a breakthrough came 51 years after Melissa vanished. Her biological father, 73-year-old Jeffrey Highsmith, submitted a DNA sample to 23andMe. The results revealed a genetic connection between him and one of Melissa's 3 children. This discovery set in motion a remarkable reunion. Melissa, who had grown up under the name Melanie Walden Miyoko, was stunned when she received a message on Facebook from people claiming to be her siblings. At first, she was skeptical. "They think I'm their sister. Oh, this is a scam." Her siblings, Rebecca 48, Victoria 47, Sharon 45, and Jeff 42, had spent their lives searching for her. Despite years of heartbreak and false leads, they remained hopeful. Their mother, Alta, now elderly and emotionally exhausted from decades of searching, was initially reluctant to do another DNA test. She had already submitted DNA 6 times before, all with disappointing results. "She was tired, hurt, and carried a lot of guilt," said Victoria. "But we finally convinced her, and it was that DNA test combined with our dad's that gave us Melissa back." Melissa, now 53, said that growing up, she always felt something was off. "Me and my mom were never close," she said, referring to the woman who raised her. "It was a bad childhood. I wasn't allowed to go outside." She said it was because I was born at home and had brain damage, but nothing added up. Her childhood was lonely and strict, a stark contrast to the freedom her 2 brothers enjoyed. At age 15, Melissa ran away from home. "The way she treated me, it all makes sense now. She wasn't my real mother," Melissa said, astonishingly. She had been raised just 10 minutes away from where she was kidnapped. Melissa now believes the woman who raised her was the same one who abducted her in 1971, a woman who responded to a babysitting ad and picked her up from Alta's roommate while Alta was at work. All those years I wondered, why is my mom like this? Why doesn't she love me? Why did she even have me if she didn't want me? Melissa said. Now, she finally has the answers. Today, she has chosen to go by her birth name, Melissa, and is slowly reconnecting with a family that never stopped searching for her. Melissa Highsmith, a new beginning after a lifetime of lies after reconnecting with her biological family. Melissa Highsmith reached out to the woman who had raised her through Facebook Messenger. When Melissa asked if she recognized the name, Melissa Highsmith, the woman at first denied it. Then, her tone shifted. That's when she said, "I've been wanting to tell you something for many, many years," Melissa recalled. The woman claimed that Melissa had been sold to her for $500 on the street, a story Melissa doesn't believe. "In my heart, I do not believe she bought me," she said. "I think she was the one who answered the babysitting ad and abducted me." Melissa hasn't seen the woman since 2002. After that chilling message, she immediately cut off all contact and blocked her on social media. "Everything I knew before age 15, before I ran away, was a lie." Now Melissa is focused on moving forward. Learning she had two loving parents and 4 siblings who never gave up on her has filled her with gratitude. "It makes me feel very blessed," she said. "There is a time for everything. It just wasn't my time before, but now it is. God made this all possible." For most of her life, Melissa believed her birthday was February 2nd, but her actual birth date is November 6th. She and her husband have decided to honor that false identity by celebrating February 2nd as the end of Melanie. Melissa reunited with her parents and 2 of her 4 siblings during Thanksgiving weekend in 2022. Her sister Victoria wrote in a Facebook post, "I could not stop crying. I was overjoyed. I'm still walking around in a fog trying to comprehend that my sister is right in front of me. We found her." Melissa is planning to renew her wedding vows so that her biological father can walk her down the aisle. "My heart is full and bursting with emotion. I'm just really, really happy." Although the statute of limitations for filing kidnapping charges has expired in Texas, Melissa has taken steps to reclaim her identity. In May 2023, her name was legally changed from Melanie to Melissa Highsmith. Following the DNA confirmation, her husband, John Brown, shared the emotional moment on Facebook. "My breathtaking wife and amazing woman has officially been given her identity back." Melissa Highsmith is an inspiration to all and a beacon of hope to many. "We thank the Lord for this great work of reuniting Melissa with the Highsmith Livingston family." Cold case breakthrough. Alan Livingston's remains found after 40 years, another decades-old mystery. The case of Alan Livingston, a man missing since 1983, finally saw resolution in April 2023. Alan, a 25-year-old worker at the Goodyear plant in Gadsden, Alabama, was reported missing when he failed to show up for work. He was last seen on April 16, 1983, driving a brown 1980 Ford Bronco. Authorities suspected the Bronco might have ended up in the Coosa River, based on sonar imaging and magnetometer readings from the Etowah County Rescue Squad. Divers searched the area but were forced to call off the operation after hours in the water. 2 months later, a man named William Roth was arrested in Arkansas in connection to a murder in Texas. During questioning, he made a chilling confession. Detective Sergeant Eric Phillips recalled, "Just matter of fact," he said, "yes, I killed someone in Gadsden, Alabama." Roth told investigators that he met Alan Livingston at Players Lounge, a local bar, and other night spots in the area. At the time, Roth was a transient with no permanent residence. Authorities believe Roth murdered Livingston and possibly disposed of his vehicle in the river. After 40 years, the mystery of Alan Livingston's disappearance has been solved, giving long overdue closure to his family. The final clue. Alan Livingston's fate uncovered after 39 years 4 months following Alan Livingston's 1983 disappearance. Authorities in Gadsden, Alabama searched for answers. William Roth, a transient drifter, eventually became a suspect after confessing to another murder in Texas. When investigators returned to Gadsden, they interviewed employees at Taco Bell and Jocks who remembered Roth. Known locally as a homeless man, staff said they sometimes gave him food. Though Roth was sentenced to life in prison for the Texas murder, he was never charged in connection with Alan's case. According to Rainbow City Detective Jordan McCartney, Roth's accounts were 2% consistent to pursue prosecution. He really admitted to it, but there wasn't any evidence to back up his stories, and his stories changed many times, McCartney said. In one version, Roth claimed Alan made a sexual advance which upset him. He said he retrieved a baseball bat from his car and beat Alan, leaving him alive but injured. Other versions claimed he left Alan covered with leaves at a bird sanctuary, buried him somewhere in Gadsden, put his body in the Bronco and drove it to Texas, pushing the vehicle into a river, abandoned the Bronco in Sheffield, Alabama, after it ran out of gas. None of these versions were verifiable, and the case eventually went cold. Roth remained in prison until 2012, when declining health led to his transfer to a nursing home in San Antonio, Texas. Then, in January 2022, Nearly 40 years after Alan vanished, a stunning discovery was made. A YouTube diver, Chris Overstreet, was working on another missing person case when he stumbled upon a submerged vehicle in the Coosa River. A brown 1980 Ford Bronco, buried under mud and silt, wedged between trees. With assistance from an FBI dive team, the Bronco was examined. Inside the vehicle, investigators found boots and clothing that matched what Alan was last seen wearing. Skeletal remains, an Alabama driver's license, still intact, a Goodyear employee ID card, a social security card, and other personal items. Captain Bobby Jackson noted the Bronco was so deteriorated that they couldn't extract it from the river without it falling apart. The windshield was barely visible above the water. It would have come apart in our hands, he said. DNA testing, aided by a sample from Alan's younger sister in Ohio, confirmed the identity. After 39 years, the Livingston family finally had answers. Detective Eric Phillips said, "It's great to bring closure not only for the family but for the entire community, and for the law enforcement officers who spent decades trying to solve this case." Although 71-year-old William Roth will never face charges in Alan's death, the truth is finally known. New break in a 1984 cold case. The disappearance of Marianne Baginstosia, a decades-old note, and advances in forensic analysis have led to a major development in the disappearance of Marianne Baginstosia, a 25-year-old nurse's aide who vanished in June 1984 from her home in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Marianne lived at 167 West Willow Road with her 2-year-old son Jeremy and a boarder. She was separated from her husband, Jerry Baginstosia, who had moved in with his parents after the split. Despite the separation, the couple remained in contact, and Jerry often purchased things for his estranged wife. Marianne had been granted custody of their son that April, and a formal custody hearing was approaching. According to family members, she had been looking forward to a planned outing with Jerry. They were supposed to trade in her car and shop for a new one. Jerry told police that on June 5, 1984, he arrived at the house to pick up Marianne and their son. He claimed Marianne wasn't ready to leave, so he took their son to a nearby park while she got ready. But when he returned, Marianne had vanished, leaving behind her purse, cigarettes, and personal belongings. More than 4 decades later, police are re-examining the case, and the contents of a note written in 1984 have led investigators to file charges. The full details of the note and the recent developments in this case will be included in the next section. Justice decades later. Husband charged in 1984, disappearance of Marianne Baginstosia in the morning of June 5, 1984. Jerry Baginstosia claimed he arrived at his estranged wife's home on West Willow Road in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, to pick up Marianne and their 2-year-old son. He told police that Marianne wasn't ready, so he took their son to a nearby park to feed the ducks. When they returned, Jerry said, Marianne was gone. He claimed she had left a handwritten note saying she was walking to a Turkey Hill convenience store, about a mile away. But Marianne, who had a slight limp from a car accident and needed a shoe lift, was never seen alive again. Marianne's mother, Geraldine Angoro, didn't believe her daughter would have walked that distance, especially when she had plans to go out with Jerry that same day to trade in her car. Marianne's purse, cigarettes, and all personal belongings were left at home. Still, Jerry never reported her missing. Instead, it was Geraldine who notified police on June 7th, after she couldn't reach her daughter, whom she spoke to daily by phone the very next day. On June 8th, a Pequea Township police officer noticed something unusual during a check of the Baginstosia garage. A piece of cardboard was covering freshly disturbed dirt. Lifting it revealed a dugout area roughly 3 feet wide by 5 feet long, suspecting it may be a grave. Officers executed a search warrant on June 13th. That search revealed a 5-foot-deep hole, about 3 feet by 6 feet, resembling a burial site, but Marianne's body was not found. However, detectives did recover a crumpled note hidden inside a wooden nail keg in the living room. It read, "Had to run a quick errand, be right back." The note was collected and stored in evidence by Pennsylvania State Police. On June 15th, 10 days after Marianne vanished, she missed a scheduled custody hearing. With her absent, Jerry was granted custody of their son. By that time, he had already moved back into the West Willow Road home, the same home police were still investigating. Despite Jerry's account, store clerks at Turkey Hill, where Marianne was supposedly headed, had not seen her that day, though she was a known regular. Park maintenance workers also told police they hadn't seen Jerry or his truck there that day either. Further complicating Jerry's version of events, he had an unexplained injury to his left arm. He had an unexcused absence from work on June 5. He gave conflicting explanations for the garage hole. He gave inconsistent statements about the note and his actions that dashed without direct evidence. The case eventually went cold. Tragically, Geraldine passed away in 2016, never seeing justice for her daughter. Breakthrough in the case. A handwritten note solves a 38-year mystery in late 2016. Pennsylvania State Police reopened the cold case with a fresh focus. The handwritten note allegedly left by Marianne Investigators searched public databases for samples of Jerry Bajanstos's handwriting and in September 2022, executed a new search warrant at the same home on West Willow Road. This time, the team focused not just on the garage but on collecting new handwriting samples. Those samples were sent to the Pennsylvania State Police Bureau of Forensic Services in Harrisburg for analysis. The forensic handwriting analysis compared the 1984 note with the newly collected samples. According to Lancaster County District Attorney Heather Adams, the result was conclusive. The note recovered in 1984 was written by Jerry Bajanstos. This piece of evidence, held in storage for nearly 4 decades, directly contradicted Jerry's long-standing claim that the note had been written by Marianne. Armed with this finding, prosecutors charged Jerry Bajanstos with criminal homicide in connection to the presumed death of Marianne Bajanstos. Justice in motion. Jerry Bajanstos, arrested nearly 40 years after Marianne's disappearance in December 2022, nearly 4 decades after Marianne Bajanstos vanished. Her estranged husband, Jerry Bajanstos, now 68, was arrested without incident at the same Lancaster County home from which Marianne disappeared in 1984. He was booked into Lancaster County Prison, where he was initially held without bail. District Attorney Heather Adams released a statement calling the arrest long-awaited and a significant step toward long-overdue justice. This begins the criminal process in a 38-year-old case, Adams said. We hope it brings relief to Marianne's family and friends. We will do everything in our power to see that justice is done. Adams emphasized that, unlike many modern, cold cases solved through DNA evidence, this case was cracked through decades of tireless investigative work, beginning with the Pequia Township Police Department and later taken up by the Pennsylvania State Police. It was their commitment to justice and their willingness to devote resources and re-examine every piece of evidence combined with legal review and forensic analysis by attorneys in my office that led to this arrest, she said. Fabricated letters in a hidden trail. Prosecutors revealed that in 1985, Jerry told police that people claimed to have seen Marianne alive, yet he never reported those alleged sightings at the time. Even more troubling, detectives and a private investigator sent Jerry postcards and letters pretending to be from Marianne, some as early as September 1984 and others as late as 1998. These were strategic efforts to provoke a reaction or slip. Jerry never disclosed receiving any of those messages to police. Key witnesses come forward. A former daycare worker is expected to testify at trial that Marianne confided in her just before she disappeared. She allegedly said, "If I don't come back to the daycare, Jerry ended my life." Another witness, Barry Keller, a former co-worker of Jerry's at a local plant, also provided disturbing information. Speaking to a state trooper, Keller said, "I never told this to police because no one ever asked me. At the plant, we had acid tanks. They'd eat our shoes off. No OSHA rules back then. They were just outside on the grounds. Jerry knew all about them." Keller suggested that those tanks, under the wrong hands, could have been used to dispose of a body with no trace. Bail, legal challenges, and a delayed trial. In May 2023, Jerry's bail was set at $925,000, which he posted through a bail bond. The Commonwealth quickly filed a motion to revoke bail. Concerned about the seriousness of the charges and the risk of flight, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court granted the motion, and Judge John Lastname withheld, ordered Jerry to return to Lancaster County Prison by October 7, 2024. Jerry's trial was originally set for October 2024 but was later postponed to March 24, 2025, giving prosecutors and the defense additional time to prepare for what is expected to be a high-profile and emotionally charged courtroom battle.